Alright, so I'm going to talk to you about biochar and compost, and we'll get it right into it. So, definition of biochar: it's basically a form of charcoal. That's the best way to describe it to people, because people seem to always know what charcoal is. It's not the same. Charcoal generally has more volatiles and more of the terpenes and stuff left in it, so that it's easier to light and so that it burns for longer. Okay? When we're making biochar, we're trying to get all of those volatiles to burn off. That's what you get. The orange flames is all the volatiles burning off. So we're basically heating up the biomass, it starts to off gas, and we burn those gases. And what we get left behind is a very high carbon product, and that's the black stuff. And it should be crinkly and quite easy to break up. Okay? And biochar is intended for putting it into the soil, into the water, or somewhere in the built environment as well. Okay, feedstocks can be woody biomass, timber offcuts, and so on. For composting purposes, I'm guessing it's probably going to be mostly branches and other woody bits of things. So I'm going to go through this quite quickly. Probably just give you enough time to read. I'm not going to read everything on the screen, so I think you can skim read through that, right? Okay, the properties of biochar, and there's a little picture here on the right hand side, and it's showing, when it's really zoomed in, like this is on the micro scale, right? There's lots and lots of tiny little holes. Okay, so it's got a huge surface area. Usually we're aiming for over 80% carbon in the biochar, and that's easy to get even if you're making it at home yourself. You should be able to get 80 to 85% pretty easily. Okay, and it acts like a sponge because of all those little holes, and it holds water and air, and we'll talk very soon about why that's so good for compost. It's also got a cation exchange capacity, which means that it's got a certain charge, and that charge attracts minerals with the opposite charge. Okay, I'll go into that more if anyone wants to know. I'm not a chemist or anything like that, but probably between the people here, other people could probably explain what that is more important, better than I can anyway. And another attribute is that it's a habitat for microbiology, so bacteria, fungi can go down into those little holes. Okay, and the last attribute, the one that I like the most, is that it is recalcitrant, which means that it doesn't break down. Okay, so if you put it into the soil, worms don't come along and eat it. Fungi doesn't even eat it. Okay, the only thing that can break down biochar further is to burn it. Okay, so if it's in the soil, it shouldn't be getting that kind of 700-degree burning happening, right? So it decays very, very slowly. So when we put it in the soil, it's there for a long, long time. Now, the benefits of biochar for composting: it's an ideal input because it benefits the whole composting process itself. Okay, even at rates as low as 10% weight by weight. Okay, that is still quite a large amount of char. You know, if you're making a whole pile and you're making, cubic meter, say, what's the weight of that? I don't know, 700, 800 kilos maybe. Well, 2% of that, you'd get quite a lot of biochar. Biochar is quite light when it's dry, so 2% is a reasonable amount, and the more you put in, the better. Like if you can put 10 to 20%, even great. All the benefits are going to just improve. But this 2% to 10%, I've stated that there because when I did all this research for the Biochar Network, pretty much all the research is using those amounts. They're not using more than that, because generally more than 10% becomes uneconomic. It costs money to make the biochar. Okay. So first benefit I'm going to talk to you about is, and there's 10. Did I say there was going to be 10? Yep, there's 10, and there's no particular order. Okay, because it's basically all of the benefits are pretty much happening at the same time. So the first benefit is water retention. So because biochar is a big carbon sponge, it holds onto water. And so if you've got this substance inside your compost holding onto water, it means you don't have to add water as frequently. Okay, so if you're using a machine to turn a compost, you're going to do less turns, less passes. Okay, if you're turning it by hand, you don't have to turn it as often. All right. Also, if it is getting near ready for a turn and then it rains, well then the biochar is also gonna hold on to a lot of that water too. Okay. So there I've got the 2 points there. My idea of putting this in there after talking to it is that then I can share this presentation with you, and you'll have this information in there. Okay, so the second benefit is aeration. So again, because biochar has all those pores, very high porosity, very high surface area, it also holds on to air. Okay, more air in our compost means that we don't need to turn it as often. Kind of the same benefit as moisture. So it's holding more moisture and holding more air at the same time. Okay, cool. There it says there that the high surface area, as much as 1 hectare per 25 grams biochar. That's how much surface area that the biochar can have. Massive, massive amounts. Okay, the third benefit is nutrient adsorption. So this is to do with the cation exchange capacity. So the biochar in the compost, as stuff is starting to break down, the biochar can hold on to calcium, can hold on to nitrogen, and so on. Okay, what's one of the easiest things to lose when you're making compost? It's your nitrogen off gassing. If you get that ammonia smell, you're basically losing nitrogen. Okay, and what that means is that if you're losing less of your nitrogen, you're getting a better carbon to nitrogen ratio in your finished product. Fourth benefit is pH regulation. So biochar is inherently quite alkaline, somewhere around pH of 9, and so it has a lambing effect. When we do composting, often it becomes quite acidic, so it actually helps to balance the pH in the whole pile. Okay, so it's an effective lambing agent. Saves you from adding lime or calcium. The fifth one is microbial habitat. So all of those pores are home for bacteria and fungi to go into, and it's basically a big party hotel. They can reproduce, they can be safe. Yeah, not too much to say about that really. And basically the habitat there is benefiting also from more air and more water. The sixth benefit is to minimize leaching. So this is mainly if you've got compost that's uncovered. So in a rainfall event, if you get water washing through the compost, less of that nutrient will be washed out because biochar will be holding onto it. The other thing we can do is we can use biochar and make a bund or a filter around your composting system, so that when there is leachate, there is runoff moving through and moving away from the compost itself, that biochar can actually catch those nutrients and hold on to them. And then you can take that biochar and put it into your next batch of compost. And so you've got extra nutrient going into your next compost, and you're not losing that. It's not affecting local waterways and so on as well. Okay. Greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So nitrous oxide and methane are sometimes produced in composting, and because of those other reasons I've already just discussed, biochar is creating less anaerobic pockets within the compost pile, because it's adding in more air, the microbiology is more active because there's more moisture there, and so they're not going to sleep because it's got too dry or because there's no oxygen, and so there's less off-gassing of the methane and the nitrous oxide, and we know both of those are worse, in terms of the heating effect compared to carbon dioxide. Okay, the 8th benefit is that there's a voluntary carbon credit market where companies or individuals can pay to offset some of their carbon footprint, and biochar producers can get paid those carbon credits. You do need to do biochar at a fair scale. It still isn't really down small scale, where you're just making 100 litres or 200 litres in a batch. So you'd need to be fairly large scale to be able to do that, but in theory and in the future that should become easier and easier, and then you will get paid some carbon credit money for making the biochar and putting that in your compost, and that should then really improve the economics of it. Like at the moment, adding biochar to compost, it's going to be an input. You can make it yourself, but if you want to pay yourself, well, then it is costing, right? So the other thing with biochar is that it's recognized by the IPCC as one of the top carbon sequestration methods that we have. It's probably the best one, actually. They don't always say it's the best one, but us in the biochar world believe it's the best. It's so good because it has so many other co-benefits. Like, I'm giving you 10 benefits just to composting, but I did another research paper and there's 10 benefits to feeding it to livestock. So there's benefits in all sorts of areas, and basically if humans have got any problem in the world, biochar is actually a solution to pretty much any problem. You can throw it to me and I'll tell you there's probably a solution, right? Okay. Number 9 is your market differentiation. So if you are using biochar in your compost and you're selling that as a bag product or something like that, then you can market it as, hey, this has got 10% biochar in it. You can also market differentiate in that it's a more environmentally friendly process that you've used in doing the compost. Okay. And last of all is the air quality. So often composting is producing bad smells, from ammonia or hydrogen sulfide or things like that. So those are significantly reduced because of biochar, because it's holding on to the nitrogen. You're going to get less of the ammonia, and the beneficial bacteria, the habitat for all the microbiology, you get less of the kind of negative, the anaerobic bacteria and microbiology that create the smells. So you have hopefully much happier neighbours from using biochar in your compost. So those are 10 benefits. I've got some more slides, a little bit about the history of biochar, and then also about how to make it, because you can make biochar yourself. So quick history, is biochar new? No, it certainly isn't. A lot of research has been done about this, and pyrogenic carbon, it's been around since humans have been using fire. And actually 12% of the total carbon in soils worldwide is pyrogenic. And the number one way besides humans putting it there and doing it intentionally is just when we have fires in the landscape. Biochar is left behind, and again, it's about 12% of, say, if a forest burns, 12% of the carbon that was in the forest is then basically ending up on the soil, and then over time the biology gets it into the soil. You get earthworms, you get something burrows a hole, and some of the char falls down the hole, and eventually over time it gets incorporated into the soil profile. there's this example called Terra Preta in the Amazon, and this is an example of humans adding human wastes, probably food wastes and human wastes, as well as charcoal from their cooking fires, probably ash and their clay pottery, and building up over centuries a really, really dark soil, which has been called Terra Preta. And there on the picture on the left is a nice dark black soil compared to a really normal soil, which is, in the tropical rainforest, it's generally high leaching because of the high rainfall, and you get, pretty plain, unfertile soils. And so, yeah, this is kind of the proof in the pudding. These soils are still fertile, and they actually kind of expand themselves, which is quite interesting, and people don't quite understand exactly how that's happening, but basically the microbiology just kind of keeps expanding out through the soil profile, and so the amount of Terra Preta grows over time too. So what is pyrolysis? Pyrolysis is the separation of the volatiles from the biomass. So when we heat something out, we get it to off gas, and then we burn it. So this little picture here just demonstrates that with a match. So when you light a fire with a match, you always get that little bit of black left in the stick. It doesn't burn completely. That's char that's left, right? And it was actually the gases of the stick that off-gassed and burnt in the flame. And if you look at a burning flame or a burning log of wood in your fire, there's often a gap between the wood and the flames. So it's the flames that are burning the gases. They only burn the char right near the end in the presence of oxygen. And so what we do when we're trying to make biochar is we have methods to limit the amount of oxygen that will get to that char near the end of the burn process. Okay, so there's a variety of technologies that we have. There's basically three main options, and you basically have to choose the option that fits your context. It fits the amount that you want to make, and it fits the biomass, the feedstock that you have access to. So some options are these ones at the top here: flame cap, kilns, the ring kiln, and pits. So these are low capital expenditure to get them. They don't cost a lot. And a flame cap is basically when we're making a fire in a vessel. Could be just a hole in the ground, could be a metal, say a bathtub for example. You put some branches in there, you make a fire, and as it starts to ash over, then you add some more wood on top. Now when that gets burning, you add some more wood on top. And so by keep adding more material on top and on top and on top, we actually have the flame and the branches capping over and minimizing the amount of oxygen that can get into the carbon that's left in underneath. The heat radiates still downwards, so it continues to cook and off gas, but all the gases are coming up to the top and burning in the flames on the outside. So that's what we call a flame cap method. Alright. The next method we have is called a retort. This is number 2 here. And it's basically a container that we put our biomass in. The container's got small holes, and then we heat that container up. So we make a fire around it, for example, and we heat it up, and then those gases have to come out, and they get burnt by the flames as well. But the pressure inside the container is higher, so air does not get inside the container. And so once it finishes off gassing, all the carbon is just left inside in the container. And again, that can be, as small as a couple of soup cans or baked bean tins in your wood stove, all the way up to, you could use a big 200-litre steel barrel with a lid on it. Retorts are done in an industrial size as well. And then we have lastly a continuous reactor, or some kind of huge big machine. These can be, millions of dollars, where they are usually taking in a material like wood chip. They will take in an amount, it gets heated and off gases and burnt, and then it outputs the char at the end and new stuff gets put in. So it's a continuous feed thing. I've got some pictures coming up. So that's the industrial one there. So like I said, 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 20 million, huge. They often produce other products such as wood vinegar and bio oils and stuff like that, and you can usually generate electricity or process heat. Medium scale, so something that doesn't cost quite so much money, probably fits into a shipping container. Again, you can get either batch ones or continuous ones. I'll leave you to look at this later. Then sort of more of a farm scale or homestead scale would be again a retort, but a top lit updraft one. So like in this picture here, there's actually 3 200-litre barrels, and then there's spaces in between those barrels where you fill up those 3 barrels with stuff, and then you fill up all the way between those on the outsides, and you make that burn. And like I said before, it will heat up the biomass inside the barrels. That will start off gassing and kind of contribute to it. It kind of, once you get it burning, it self-sustains. Biochar is quite nice because it's an exothermic reaction. There's more energy in the biomass than what we actually need for it to burn, and that's why we can generate electricity, we can generate process heat, because there's more energy than what we need to keep the process going. Okay, another one is called the Kontiki kiln, which is this one on the left. It's often a conical shape. Some research was done, in about 69 degrees means that the smoke and that gets pulled back inside, and it's very clean burning. We have also the one I said before, the ring of fire, which basically is just 2 rings of metal, so that there's an insulation gap between them. That's for 2 reasons. One, it's causing the temperature inside to be higher, so you have more efficient burning, and then it also means that the outer ring isn't so hot, so people can go closer to it and not be scorched. It's much safer, much easier to work around. It was designed in the forest, for the forests in the US, where they're basically doing active fuel management in the forests to reduce prunings and brush and stuff. We kind of need that worldwide. And then you can make biochar at home. So here's a picture of a wood stove, and you can use soup cans or biscuit tins, steam pans, any sort of container that you can put biomass into. There needs to be a way for the gases to come out. So if it's just like a container with a lid on it, if the lid can just slightly lift up as the gases need to come out, and they'll get burnt. Or if it's biscuit tins, it will just have lots of little holes put into it. It must have a way for the gas to escape, otherwise you'll have yourself a bomb. This is probably the most ethical way to make biochar, because you're using the heat actively. You're like, if you're making it in one of these other methods here, you've lost a whole lot of heat. Whereas in this way, you're using the heat for heating your room, maybe heating hot water or cooking something, maybe heating hot water for your showers and baths and stuff. So I love this method. It only makes a small amount, but we do have 6-month winters where often people are making wood fires every night, 6 months of the year. If you get into a habit of putting in your containers, you can make a significant amount, certainly enough for your own home composting. Alright, the biochar bonus is that it is a carbon sink that really works. I have mentioned this before, so it's a negative emissions technology that's probably one of the best. 1 kilogram of biochar represents 2 to 3 kilograms of carbon removed out of the carbon cycle, usually given a 100-year minimum, but we know that it's generally a lot more than that. And there are voluntary markets that are available for trading biochar credits on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to give credit. The basis of this presentation was made by Phil from Slow Farm. I've modified it quite a bit to add in all the benefits to the composting, but he used this presentation in other presentations he's given to teach people and share about biochar. So thank you to him. And the Biochar Network got me to do that composting research. So if you're interested in biochar and you want to support more research to be done, we have individual memberships from $50 and professional memberships from $200, which is not a lot. We don't get any other funding besides the memberships, so if you'd like to support that, please do. And now I'm open to questions and answers.